Hi there, welcome back to Lost Nation Maple Homestead. Today I'm going to be doing some freezer meals, making all kinds of different ones with chicken, and then I'm going to make some with some beef. So I'm going to start by getting all of the meat ready. I'm going to unwrap the 6 pounds of hamburger that I'm going to use for the meatballs and a 5-pound venison roast that is going to be used for the Philly cheesesteak freezer meal. I also purchased from the store 2 5-pound packages of chicken breasts and 2 3-pound packages of chicken thighs. If you stick with me until the end of the video, you're going to see an epic fail with this hamburger that I'm unwrapping right now. So here I'm just cutting up the Velveeta cheese. The chicken baked broccoli potato bake only calls for 1/4 pound per meal. So I just need 1 pound for 4 meals, and I'll put that in the chicken bake. So I'm just trimming up the chicken here. I want to make sure that it doesn't have a lot of fat on the breasts when I put it into the casseroles. For the life of me, I could not find a sharp knife today. I want to apologize for this vertical video here. I use both my Canon camera and my phone when I'm recording just to get from different angles, and I didn't realize that my phone was sitting vertical on the stand rather than horizontal. So sorry about that. It's going to be this way for just a little bit. I'm kind of using what I had on hand for potatoes, so I have both red and yellow potatoes. I'm going to cut these up into chunks, so I'm halving them and then slicing them. So they're kind of they're smaller potatoes anyway, so they're kind of in a smaller chunk. And again, these are going to be baked, so I don't want them too large, but I also don't want them really small where they're going to get mushy. I'm using frozen broccoli for this recipe, and I just bought broccoli cuts. So here I'm just setting them out and then rereading the recipe to make sure that I have all the ingredients that I needed at hand. So these aluminum pans are cake pans, and they're just a smaller
size. It's not like a 13 by 9. I think it was a 9 by 8 maybe. I use the smaller size because it honestly is just the two of us and we don't need too much. We usually have enough for this size, feeds us for one supper, and then often has a little bit left over for lunch. So when I first started, I was trimming the meat. I also sliced it horizontally so that each chicken breast made 2 chicken breasts essentially. So here I'm just putting 2, it's 1 whole chicken breast. It was a real thick chicken breast, but I just sliced it in half lengthwise, and it provides a thinner breast so that we have plenty for just the 2 of us here. I actually spread the chicken out into 6 pans instead of 4. So now I'm combining the potatoes, the green peppers, and the broccoli into a big bowl so that I can mix it up and get ready to put the wet ingredients in there. So the recipe calls for 1 can of cream of chicken soup, but because I'm quadrupling essentially the original recipe, I'm having 4 cans of cream of chicken soup. So for the wet ingredients, it calls for 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh parsley, and I didn't have any chopped fresh parsley, so I just put in some dried parsley to account for that. And it calls, of course, for the cream of chicken soup, and then a teaspoon of paprika. So as I said earlier, it did call for 1/4 pound or 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese. Because I'm quadrupling the recipe, I'm putting in 1 full pound. Just cutting it up into cubes and then dividing it out amongst the 6 trays. I took a minute to get cleaned up from that particular freezer meal to get ready to wrap them. And how I wrap them is I double wrap the freeze-tight saran wrap around the casserole dish, and then I usually put at least 1 layer of aluminum foil. Sometimes I put 2 layers if I know that it's going to be longer than a month or so that we're going to eat them. And these particular ones will last us a couple of months, at least probably 3 months before we get through eating these, because they're all the same one. I always mark on my freezer meals. I put the name of the item, the date, and then instructions on how to cook it, whether it's a slow cooker meal or a casserole to bake in the oven or an Instant Pot meal, and then I usually put the time that it takes to cook it. So I'm just setting it on a cookie sheet so that it's easier to transport to the freezer. So this next freezer meal is called honey garlic chicken, and it is a crock pot meal. It calls for 2 to 4 boneless chicken breasts and then 2 cups of baby carrots. I don't care for baby carrots that are already prepared in the store. I just feel like the whole carrots have a little bit better flavor, so I usually just peel and dice up those. I'm putting these carrots into pretty large chunks. Now I'm just getting my freezer meal bags into the freezer stands that I have. I bought these off Amazon. I can link them down in the description box if you're interested. They really do come in handy to hold the bag up. Although I did give a couple to my sister, so I only have 3 now, and wouldn't you know it, I'm making 4 to 5 or to 6 sometimes in freezer meals at a time, and so I end up just using a bowl like I used to use and set the freezer bag inside that. It works fine too. So here I'm just liberally putting in some garlic. It actually calls for 3 garlic cloves minced in each recipe, and of course I'm tripling this particular one, so I'm just sort of spooning some in to taste. The recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of dried basil for each recipe, so I'm spooning that into each bag. To this, I'm adding 1/2 cup of soy sauce to each bag. And now a half a cup of ketchup per bag. In goes 1/3 cup of honey per bag. And just like the chicken broccoli potato bake, because it's only just the two of us at the house, I'm only putting in 2 breasts per bag for this particular recipe as well. That's just enough chicken for 1 full meal and possibly a little left over for lunch. When I'm making any type of meat marinade or a freezer meal for the crock pot that might have a lot of liquid, I always double bag the freezer bags. So here I'm just making sure I get all of the air out of it, squeezing that air out, and then compacting the bag in order to put it into another bag after. And then I also label the bags just as I did before with the name of the item, the date, and then the instructions on how to cook it. So this next freezer meal is a meat marinade, and it's called Marinated Italian Chicken, and it has 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breasts, although this time I'm using thighs. And then it has red pepper flakes, garlic powder, Italian dressing, and then some mayonnaise. So here I'm just putting in the mayonnaise. It calls for 1 cup per recipe. To that, I'm adding the Italian dressing. I just bought a bottle of zesty Italian dressing, and it calls for 1 cup per recipe, and of course I'm quadrupling this recipe, so I'm adding more, obviously, than the 1 cup. Don't be afraid to play around with ingredients when you're doing marinated meats anyways. It's really to your liking. Then 1/4 teaspoon of ground red pepper per recipe. It's going to take a few minutes to whisk all of the ingredients together. Then I just divide the wet ingredients into the freezer bags so that each package gets about the same amount of marinade. About 3 chicken thighs per recipe is what I'm putting in. That's about what we would have at a dinner anyways. So I ended up making a total of 12 chicken freezer meals. There were 6 of the chicken, potato, and broccoli bake. There were 3 of the honey garlic chicken with carrots that goes in the crock pot. And then there were 3 of the marinated Italian chicken for the grill.
Okay, so I definitely had an epic fail with the meatballs. It's said to mix the first 4 ingredients and mix it really good and make them into meatballs, and then mix the rest of the ingredients and put it in the bag for the freezer meal. I completely did not read that very carefully and mixed all of the ingredients together. It was one giant soupy mess. I'm still trying to make the meatballs, but I'm not sure that they're going to come out. They definitely are not nice formed meatballs. And then because it was such a large amount of beef and soupy mess, I decided to try to make a few meatloafs. And so I'm going to bake the meatloaf and freeze it so that we can take it out and then reheat it. So hopefully it won't be too bad.
So because of the epic disaster with the meatballs, I decided to cut my losses and not do the last freezer meal that I was going to do with venison roast.
I thank you for coming today for my mix-ups as well as my successes, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.